Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Happy Catty Crypto here. So it's that time, and this is kind of what we've all been waiting for, because we all know Zaradar is more or less always pushed us in the correct direction, so to speak, and a lot of you have been waiting for his white paper to come out on his idea of a USTC repeg, and we do have that for you folks. So let's dive straight into it, and I'll leave a link to this in the description. And as you can see, we've got Tobias Anderson at the top, because that's Zaradar's actual name, and he's a really awesome guy. As you guys know, I'm quite close with Zaradar. I'm always back and forth with him. I get a lot of my information from him and pester him quite a considerable amount. So he's a really awesome guy. He's got a lot of love to give to this community, and you know, he's dead set on what he believes should be a repeg. So let's dive straight into it. In May 2022, the proof of stake blockchain network known today as Terra Classic witnessed a black swan event that caused the collapse of Terra and Luna through a vicious death spiral, which resulted in printing trillions of governance tokens, a massive debt mountain in the form of uncollateralized stablecoins, an exodus of significant intellectual property to competing blockchain networks. However, as fortune would have it, we were left with a key asset that, if nurtured carefully, could bring about one of the most significant economic recovery in modern history. And should you not have guessed it by now, that asset is the people reading this document, investors with so-called diamond hands, entrepreneurs betting on the future of our platform and the very large diverse user base, which in its totality can doubt the community. In the close to 8 years I've spent in crypto, I've yet to come across a more vibrant, emotional and diverse flock of people as committed to their cause as the lunatics. And for better or worse, I find myself proudly fighting against the dying of the light as a die-hard lunatic, in order to do what is within my power to help heal the community and fix that which was abandoned by its creators. So we've got a thing which is called Conway's Law: crazy company equals crazy code. I thought Conway's Law with any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. However, stating the obvious is obviously no real feat, and the question remains on how to successfully attempt another remise at the challenge of creating a truly decentralized money market, which can avoid the pitfalls, value subjectivism, and monetary instability while dealing with an aforementioned problems. Regardless of where one might stand ideologically on this question, it seems clear that our options are limited. Our timeline is growing shorter by the day, and while we have seen many good ideas on how to remedy the situation, due to the wonders of Conway's Law, they all fit largely onto one of two paths that can be travelled to achieve the much sought after revival of Terra Classic and put our network back on trajectory towards stable growth. Bailout USTC via quantitative easing (QE). Path 1 leads us to the temptation of pursuing the philosophies of quantitative easing, which has historically been the magic fix for most modern economies. The last few decades, QE can be applied in many ways, and countries such as Japan has taken it to the extreme in the ways that most likely contributed to the significant growth in commodities and cryptocurrency during the last bull market, as retail investors fled their local markets in favour of inflation-resistant assets, while central bankers gobbled up 430 billion worth of equities without much to show for it. Thus it stands to the reason that is really, for some reason, I don't know why it makes me laugh inside my head so much. Thus it stands the reason that applying similar theories in what amounts to a Weimar Republic scenario would at best result in a slight bump in inflation, and could worst case lead to a mass exodus of the remaining liquidity, as smart money bets on QE's inability to guarantee an economic recovery. All the while, the growth in the M2 money supply will speed up the dilution of whatever value was created ex nihilo during the corrosive effects of inflation without any real growth in on-chain volume to combat it. To further compound the problem of applying QE strategies, we have our 10 billion debt mounting, waiting to tear down any bull run with an avalanche of speculative mercenary capital, which is patiently awaiting the repeg of USTC to $1. A situation that would most likely result in a need for further QE cooldown aid, cool aid down the road and keep us on track to match the US government's record-setting accumulated deficit of $31 trillion in order to sustain the growth cycle, unless additional measures were put into place to artificially reduce the USTC supply, which could only be accomplished via successful government votes, and even if passed, the result would most likely be challenged legally in court of law, dragging out the process for years to come, and I've stated this many times. So, recapitalization of USTC via quantitative tightening. Path 2 takes us on a much more painful journey that includes trials such as austerity in the forms of burn taxes, interest rates increasing on staking rewards by lowering the reward weight in exchange for increased lockup periods, e.g. 90 days, and a massive effort to recapitalize Terra and Luna pools via sweat. Do you know, it always, does this get anybody else when a word like that split between a line? I just pick a line, goddammit. Sweatquity and partition pools, in essence of a form of quantitative tightening of our primary M2 money supply that would lead to a significant reduction in circulating supply of both USTC and LUNC, while putting both value networks on a sustainable path to lasting economic recovery. Combined with a razor-sharp focus on attracting fresh capital to the Terra and Luna pools via increased end-user utility and rewards on staking that, coupled with a bump in the undelegation period, will ensure more predictable liquidity flows in the network, it is my belief that we can create a more attractive environment for new businesses to set up shop, granted that we can provide them with functional volatility guards that can allow their fledgling business models to mature and become self-sustaining economic engines that over time can help erode the debt mountain and fuel the economic recovery of Terra Classic in a way that is both organic and sustainable. So I think this means increasing the 21-day period to maybe more. To enable such a reality, we will need to implement a new on-chain feature called partition pools, which will allow DApps to dynamically create their own nested capital partitions inside the Terra pool by paying a LUNC-based fee to the platform, a form of spam protection, which grants them an empty partition and their own commodity token with an initial supply of 0. These new commodity tokens would utilize a fixed or dynamic price point measured in USTC and could only be capitalized via LUNC traded via USTC to help keep the pool's partition stable while allowing capital interoperability. Dedicated remittance corridors would be established and monitored by the ABS keeper, which would throttle liquidity flows out of partition pools to ensure that it does not exceed a certain percentage of the overall liquidity in the Terra and Luna pools, thus providing a significant degree of over-collateralization to the two primary liquidity pools without creating excessive capital friction inside the individual secondary partition pools that service various virtual economies on our network. Sorry, my throat's getting a little bit dry, one sec. Ooh, 9 minutes talking, that gets your throat dry. Okay, conclusion. While implementing a QE strategy does have the ability to create a short-term growth cycle, it would most likely not be sustainable medium to long term. Due to our waste of oversupply LUNC, furthermore, an increase in the primary M2 money supply would certainly make investment prohibitive for newcomers, as they would be wary of future QE handouts. One could try to avoid this scenario by accelerating investment into growing on-chain utility. However, due to low success rate of startups in general, the short opportunity windows in which QE will have a positive effect on the network, this strategy amounts to a very high-risk gambit, with very limited rewards. In addition, once the path has been trodden, it will most likely lead to a drinking more QE Kool-Aid and further diluting of existing investors as more LUNC is printed to protect the USTC Repeg efforts. By now, a wise man would probably suggest that it's best simply to walk away from the situation, start over and leave the network to die along with the thousands of other failed experiments that came before it. Whereas the fool would argue that which is already dead cannot die. In this story, I'm very much the fool considering the time and effort I've put into this project thus far. However, it is my firm belief that the only viable option for recovery is to walk the hard road, embrace our need for QT and roll up our sleeves to begin a 3 to 5 year process of building our way out of Goblin Town, with new on-chain features aimed at incentivize businesses to build on our networks. You can see that on the Terra Rebels roadmap, and keep growing on-chain utility to the point where the current 10 billion USTC supply will no longer be sufficient to service the reserve currency needs of a value-driven blockchain network backed by millions of users. 2. USTC Repeg proposal. In order to attract the long-term capital investment needed to repeg USTC, we need to establish an anti-fragile market maker system that will incentivize new businesses to leverage the existing platform's infrastructure in a way that is inducive of positive network growth, while being prohibitive of economic instability, as it is the assumption that if we continue growing our network effect while stabilizing the current price volatility via encouraging increased staking and on-chain utility, then eventually the market will reward us with increased valuation and enough liquidity to both repeg USTC and further expand our platform. To accomplish this feat, we'll need to implement a host of new features that can enable us to establish additional capital controls, which will allow entrepreneurs to create new features on one of the few truly community-driven networks in the crypto space without assuming any risk to their investors' capital, all whilst granting them interoperability with existing network assets such as wallets, end users, smart contracts, etc. So you've got, like I said, a little stick man for the D app. I like it. Zaradar, I like it. In exchange, these businesses will pay a one-time fee to create their own partitioned pools. That will be routed to the treasury, which in turn issues a new commodity token that can be utilized by its pool of origin. Commodity tokens will be subject to a special utility tax that would be split between the platforms to fund the tranche concept that Alex has envisioned and the seigniorage recipients as a payment for utilizing various network features. There would also be a swap tax, also known as a Tobin tax, applied when a commodity exit the partitioned pools into USTC, which would be subject to the capital controls in the form of throttling rolling average, as measured by the ABS keeper tax policies governed by the Treasury, e.g. reward weight, and other volatility guards implemented on the platform. So partial swaps concept. For the partition pools concept to function and for us to repeg USTC, it is imperative, I love that word, that's like my favorite word, that partial swaps and eventually full swaps between LUNC and USTC are enabled with a 10 billion hard cap. On LUNC supply, that ensures no one can swap into the Luna pool if the transaction would break the 10 billion hard cap. Amazing idea, which was set in proposal 3568. Paired with the increased on-chain utility and consistent network growth, this will allow value to start flowing through the capital pools in a way that would yield tax revenue, which could slowly help recapitalize the platform reserves while we prepare to expand our capability to provide virtual currency services to edge networks, LOT, and other second layer use cases. Partition pools concept. So the partition pools contain a new denom subtype that would enable us to extend the behavior of the Terra pool while maintaining backwards compatibility with the existing tokens in such a way that will allow new commodity tokens to be created, which can exist in tandem with the current protocol tokens, LUNC and USTC, etc. I guess the etc is all the stablecoin tokens. However, unlike the government-sanctioned protocol tokens, these would be more akin to the commodity money used primarily in closed financial systems to facilitate various forms of commerce and attribute behavior more akin to the sound of money. As such, partition pools would always start with an initial supply of 0, and they would be shielded in such a way that they could only be capitalized via the native governance token LUNC, representing a debt to equity swap of sorts between the governing community and the private businesses seeking to set up shop on our network. Once the partition pools are capitalized beyond a certain point, which could be configurable via governance parameters, remittance corridors would be open up to enable swapping from commodity tokens to USTC, from USTC to commodity tokens, thus allowing USTC to act as a reserve currency to facilitate value transfer between individual partition pools of a significant size, whilst offloading the taxes of their end users' cost of doing business, which would be sustainable as long as we are dealing with micropayments and our overall transaction cost does not exceed that of competing networks. Remittance corridors are simply just regulated swap channels that are subject to throttled rolling averages as measured by the ABS keeper. Their goal is to allow regulated flow of capital between various commodity tokens created on Terra Classic Network, so tranche concept. The main goal of an aforementioned features is to help recapitalize the platform reserves to the point where it becomes plausible to fund the creation of a tranche system that can be managed 100% on-chain and protected using a range of volatility guards such as an ABS keeper, ML-based sentiment analysis, tranche-triggered break factors increases, and any other idea that would help provide economic stability to to the network as a whole, as most of this feature would be outlined in great detail by the proposal put forth by Alex, and given that it's still my belief that our many months of debating the merits of his ideas was always beneficial to both of us, even though we never really gained consensus on the matter of printing more LUNC, I feel that it would be pointless to go into further detail on the subject and believe his idea can be combined seamlessly with other features to provide a construction that is stronger and greater than some of its parts. And I've stated this, that, you know, people's ideas that get put forward can always get changed, added to, and like finessed as time goes on, so to speak. So there's lots of references in this, and this is very true. If you don't fight with your best friend, that's not. And you're never going to agree on everything in this world. And that's all we've really got for you in this one, folks. I'm going to leave a link to this in the description. You can have a read through. You don't even need to read. You can just tap listen at the top. I thought it was lazy to tap listen. I thought I should read through it myself and not really be that lazy. So let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you're all thinking. Let me know what's going on inside your head. And just stay safe out there, okay? None of this is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Beware of scammers, doppelgangers, anybody pretending to be me. And I'll catch you in the next one.